I've always been inspired by that late 90s, early aughts Y2K, Frutiger Aero, Solarpunk, tropical paradise aesthetic that is so prevalent in anime and video games back then. And I figured I'd just revisit it and show how I use different tools to make something like this. Here we are in Houdini, starting with the ground plane, applying some attributes to deform the plane as well as control the fake caustics that you can observe in the material. Following a very similar method with the top plane, which is going to be the water. And here's the material using noise for the ripples and real absorption to give you that clear to deep blue gradient. Here we are creating the terrain using Houdini's height field workflow to create layers, masks, etc. Some of which are then used to blend between different textures, shaders, etc. to create our terrain material. We kept it fairly simple here because we're trying to achieve some realism, but hyper-realism is not really all that necessary. Speaking of which, we move on to our palm trees now, and you'll notice that these are just essentially cards that have palm tree textures that I rendered out of Cinema 4D. And then these are all scattered on the terrain using various attributes. Because they're so far away and small in the image, we can get away with using cards as opposed to full geometry for the palm trees, which is more resource intensive. And I'm using a fairly standard randomization technique here to apply different random palm textures to each card. And now we have the big old cloud in the distance using the workflow that's become fairly standard since Houdini 20, and using a standard Redshift volume material with some tweaks in order to get the look. And finally, we have our wind turbines, which, even though the node tree looks kind of crazy, it's not really that much going on. Just using fairly standard procedural modeling techniques in Houdini, using also certain expressions to drive some animations automatically. These are meant to have a bit of like a toy-like or game-like or anime-like aesthetic to them, so I'm not trying to get too detailed with them, just something that will hold up at a distance. And checking on our final scene, we kick off the render, walk away, and wait. Once they're done, we've loaded our renders into Resolve and we're on a color page. We're using ACEs and color space transforms as needed. We are turning on a little noise reduction, a little motion blur, and we're also applying a little bit of chromatic aberration reduction, but to add chromatic aberration. And finally, we're on Dehancer, scrolling down, disabling all tools, and then going from top to bottom, seeing what I did in each section. Toggling it off and on just to compare the before and after. And here we go, we are done. Maybe eventually I'll post up the non-time-lapsed long-form version of this. In the meantime, hopefully this was helpful, informative, or at the very least, entertaining. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.